Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Kevin Creatives. Check out my custom Transformers Furai SKYWARP. And let's just get this out of the freaking way right now. This model kit freaking sucks. Yeah. I don't know what to tell ya. Yeah, Furai Flame Toys. I hear you make awesome action figures. They certainly look cool. Your model kits, not so great. At least from this one. This was my first experience with them. I'm gonna tell you right now, the build is not very solid. Painting it was fine. Painting everything up, typical, just paint the parts as you will and all that. But yeah, the putting it together part and posing it was not so great. I had to really file down some of the parts just because they just did not want to go together. I try my best not to paint any pegs and the holes and all that, just to avoid stuff like that. And that wasn't the issue here. It wasn't that I painted over anything. The parts straight up just did not want to fit together. So I don't know if anybody else had that issue. I've never heard anybody having issues with these kits. That's why I was very surprised. I've just heard nothing but good things. But maybe I got a lemon. Could be that. Maybe I just got a bad one. But yeah, the parts just did not want to go together, and I had to really force them or just file them down because goddamn, I was struggling. Not only that, the thighs on this guy suck completely. 100%. They're a floppy, horrible mess. They don't want to pose. Like, you can pose them up and down, but outwards it's like a Woody doll. They just flop around back and forth, so you can't really pose in any type of way there. So I was super disappointed with that. And while we're on the complaints, let's just get them out of the way in the beginning so we can have a good time. There's like a part for the upper thigh. There's like an inner frame gray mechanical part, and that's made out of the rubbery polycap material. So the paint just came right off as I was just trying to put the piece into place, and that sucks. So now we just have that exposed bare gray plasticky rubbery part. Luckily it's covered up pretty well, so you can't tell all that much, but from the back of the leg you can definitely see that there's just bare plastic there, and that sucks. For the joint, it's for like the knee joint, basically the upper knee joint. And yeah, it's just annoying. It's like, ugh, why would you want that? Why would you design it that way? Why would you not just have that be a plastic ABS piece like the rest of it? I don't know why they did that. Bad idea. So I just gotta say, points off. I'm just gonna say it. Let's get that out of the way. Points off for Flame Toys for their engineering and their design choice. It's just not so great. That being said, the actual silhouette of this design is pretty cool. I do like this as a Seeker. I think it looks pretty solid. I think it looks cool. It looks sleek and all that. It was just a shame that putting it together wasn't so great. But with that out of the way, let's get into the paint job. Yes, the part that really matters. So just to start things off, I did some minimal seam line filling. I don't like to do it always just because it just creates more problems down the line, especially if the parts end up splitting and all that. So I just decided, moving forward, I'm only going to do seam lines on things that are just really basic. And in this case, the nose cone and cockpit were pretty simple enough. I mean, the cockpit kind of had some splitting issues. There were some, like I said, the fitment of this kit wasn't the greatest, so I had to work with that. But for the most part, it came out clean, so no issues really there. And then for the nose cone on the back, that came out perfect. That seam is gone. I have to say, I'm getting way better at filling in seams and understanding how it all works, so I'm very happy about that. I actually forgot after I painted it that it was two separate parts. I think I mentioned that in the work in progress video, but yeah, it looks great. Couldn't be happier. That was very nice. So I started off doing that, and then for the inner frame parts, with my usual stylings, I just used some Alcalad gunmetal, mixed it together with some Super Metal Mr. Gundam color, Super Fine Silver. I used that one, and yeah, it looks great. I think it came out with a nice consistency, because the thing is, obviously this kit has a lot of silver going on, being that it is one of the main colors of this design. I wanted to make sure that the inner frame gunmetal came out a lot darker, so that way you wouldn't really compare it that much together and they wouldn't blend so well. I wanted to have that distinction between the two, so I leaned a little bit heavier with the gunmetal, and it looks great. What can I say? No complaints here. And then in terms of using the super fine silver, that was just one of the colors I had laying around that I was like, I haven't used this before, let's see what happens if I try it this way. Just because I've said this before, there's really no wrong choices when it comes to mixing silver and gunmetal. It's just a matter of what you want to do, and in this case, I wanted the silver to stand out on on this kit because, like I said, this is one of the main colors. I figured I'd use that for mixing with the gunmetal, just for the simplicity of time management and getting everything together in a uniform type of way. I painted the silver parts first with the Mr. Color Silver, and then when I was going in to do the gunmetal parts, I just kept that silver in the airbrush and then just mixed in the gunmetal into that. That way we can just keep the train going. I won't have to clean out the airbrush, switch out all the parts and everything like that, you know, just keep things simple. And that's kind of where my mind's at whenever I'm painting, is how can I make this as quickly and as efficient as possible. So I try to get colors and paints and stuff that I can use together, so that way we can just keep the train moving. And then again, I wanted to be able to distinguish the parts between each other. Starting with the silver, we did that first. We added a little bit of gunmetal in just so we could do the inner frame, and then we added even more gunmetal to the mix for the headpiece as well, so that way the head would have its own color palette, different from even the inner frame and then everything else. I didn't want it to be black, I didn't want it to be gunmetal, I wanted it to be its own thing. I think the head is very distinguishable, especially for the Seekers. I feel like because the Seekers all have that one trait in common where their heads are all exactly the same, I feel like that should stand out. So I wanted that to be different from everything else about this kit. And I'm very happy with how that color came out. I darkened it up just enough to where it wasn't just a very black gunmetal color, but it was still light enough so that way you can distinguish that there is some metallic flake to it. And I really like that. The black came out very nicely here. This was one where I was like, okay, we've had some good practice with black before, but we really need to nail it on this one because that's the main color on this palette. So thankfully I got the mixtures finally to a level that I liked. I got the shading to where I wanted it to be. So even though the parts are all supposed to be black, there is still some shading and highlighting going on. On its own, you may think of it as like a gray, but when you see it all put together, it does come across as very black, especially when I have the lights on it. It really washes it out and you can see the shading and highlighting popping off everywhere throughout this kit. I'm very happy with where I've gone with that. I was really concerned that this would come off as gray more than black, but no, I think I've got things down and this definitely comes off as black. Couldn't be happier. And to do that, I just used the primer black as the base, and then I used German gray with a dark gray, mix them together, and then just try to keep things as dark as possible, because as soon as you use any types of gray on top of black, it does become pretty darn noticeable. So I wanted to make sure that we had a nice balance where it would blend in, and I think it did. And then for the purple, there was some masking that needed to be done. The wings are all just black, so all that silver, the purple, the Decepticon logo, everything there was all just masked off. I had to be really careful, and it came out 99% perfect. There was a little unfortunate flake of paint on one of the silver parts of the wing. That's just gonna happen. What are you gonna do? I could have gone back and probably fixed it, but that would have been a lot of time wasted, and I just said screw it, we're just gonna move forward, plow ahead. And for the purple, I'm actually very happy with how this shading came out, because I was really worried it was gonna come out too noticeable and vibrant for the shading, but I figured out a nice blend of the colors so that way it would still mix well while adhering to the colors I was going for. In the terms of the purple with SKYWARP, I've seen it done a few different ways when I was looking up reference photos. I wanted to be a bit more muted just because this is a darker Decepticon evil color scheme, so I didn't want it to be a very bright, vibrant purple. But at the same time, I saw that a lot of the purple being used was a very lavenderish color, very just pale purple, and I didn't quite want to do that as well. Again, this is like a Decepticon, so I wanted it to kind of have its own feeling to it, and I think that worked here. And then to do this, all I did was a base layer of straight Mr. Color purple, and then I added the Mr. Color Gundam purple to the mix, which is kind of a very light lavenderish color. So I had to be careful with that mixture because, again, I didn't want the shading to be too obvious. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to really steal your eye away. So I wanted things to blend in pretty well. So thankfully, I had a lot of practice with the Real Grade Evangelion, and then using what I learned from that, I was able to kind of tweak the ratio here and get it to where I wanted it to be. And then for the silver accenting that I did around the wings and everything, and then the legs, the thrusters and stuff like that, that was just a lot of masking, and I'm glad with how it came out. Oof. So as always, I like to find little details on the kit that I can just use to my advantage. I figure if they're going to mold them in there, I might as well utilize them. That way they don't just get washed away. And I was a little worried about adding the silver onto the wings just because I didn't want to break it up too much. But honestly, I think this looks great. I think they did a great job of adding in their own little panel lines and spots there that I could take take advantage of, and I'm very happy with the blend of the silver, the purple, and everything there. There was a couple of spots I decided to hand paint. I'm trying to get better at hand painting just because it is a time saver if you don't have to mask every little bit. So I'm glad that things came out pretty well there. I will say the null ray, I did a lot of masking for that, and it looks great. It comes across pretty clean, and I'm pretty happy with how that came out. The null ray is supposed to be purple. I don't remember what happened there, if I just wasn't paying attention or if I just thought that this should be black instead. It still works. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I might end up having to glue them in place because, again, this kit is just a mess when it comes to the fitment. The right null ray doesn't plug in. It just sits there. If you move it, it's falling out. So I might just have to super glue them into place just so we don't have to worry about things falling apart, because this is going to be a gift for somebody and I don't want to give them a busted up falling apart gift that's going to crumble in their hand. So looking at the original G1 toy, there is blue for those vents on the knees. I decided just to go with silver. I was really tempted to make those blue, but that was going to stand out way too much and I didn't want that to be the case. I just figured let's just keep things silver and keep things streamlined. It's going to look a little bit more devious and a little bit more intense and a little less goofy if we do that. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I decided to keep that in silver instead of blue. It just would have been kind of weird, so I'm happy with the choice I made. One little regret I will say is I didn't paint the eyes. I could have, but my concern was those eyes are so microscopically tiny that if I tried putting them in the socket with the paint on, it could have potentially scraped off and that would have looked terrible on its own. So I just said, screw it. We'll just leave the eyes. They have a very shiny, glassy texture to them. So hopefully that'll help just make them stick out. The problem is all the light is being closed off from the rest of the head. There's no room for any light piping to go in. So it's just pure darkness there. So I do kind of wish I painted the eyes, but we're just going to have to live with it. It is what it is. In the future, I don't know. I'd probably take that into consideration. So the Decepticon logos, I am very happy with how that came out. I didn't want to make the purple there be the same as the purple everywhere else. That's the part that stands out the most on any Transformer toy is their logos, so I wanted that to be its own thing. I mostly masked everything off with just tape, and then for the parts that were a little too close, that were touching just a little, you can see it there on the top of the head part of the logo, I have blue tack, and I just got little tiny, just the most microscopic like grain of sand pieces of blue tack, and just made sure to fit them into those little sockets and sections. And for the most part, I'd say it's 99.9% perfect. There's a little bit of bleeding just because there's always going to be issues, but for the most part, it looks great, especially from a distance. You have it on the shelf. Good Lord, I just love how it looks. So all I did was I masked it off, sprayed silver on the logos, and then from there, I just sprayed clear purple on top. And then I just tried to keep the consistency for the purple on each logo as nicely as possible. It's kind of hard to tell until it dries, so I had to just let things sit for a bit and then just check, all right, does it look good? Should we add another layer? And then just decide on where I wanted it to be. But at the end of the day, I have to say I'm very happy with it. The logos look amazing. They really pop out because that metallic purple really stands out from the standard flat opaque purple that we have here, this very pastel purple that I put on everything else. Part of me wanted to paint the cockpit as well, but I decided, you know what? Having the cockpit just be its own clear piece would give it its own texture and its own aesthetic that would help break up the kit even more. Because I did really think about some of the old toys that I've had throughout the years, and I did remember thinking that anytime they painted the cockpit orange instead of leaving it clear orange, I'd never liked that. I don't think it ever looked that great. It kind of made it look cheaper and gave it more of a toy vibe, so I decided to leave things clear here, and I'm very glad that I did. I think this looks pretty great. I think if I did it with fluorescent paints, that would have looked nice, but I don't think it would have stood out as much as it does here with it just being clear. I think that makes a nice little touch. It gives its sense of life to it. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this critique of my paint job. I think for what I had to work with, the paint job came out pretty damn well. There are some room for improvements. Like I said, there's a couple of chips here and there that could have been avoided if I had just done things a little bit more cleaner. But overall, things came out great. I think my choices in terms of how I used the paints and what paints I went with worked out pretty damn perfect. There was a lot of cause for concern, especially with the purple and the black for the highlighting and shading that could have gone wrong. And I think I got the blending here so good. I think the color choices worked out great. I think the shading came out pretty damn perfect. I like the fact that you can still see shading on the black parts, but it still looks very black and not gray. I like the fact that we have the metallic logos that stand out from the flat colors that we have everywhere else. I like the fact that even the silver looks so refined. I made sure to pick out a specific silver so that way even that would have have its own feel to it, to have everything come out cohesively. And when you look at this, you see SKYWARP and nobody else. So one last little bit that I want to throw in. Like I said before, this is a gift. I am going to be sending this off to good old Thew Adams from Toy Grind. I'm a big fan of his. I love his videos. He's a big inspiration for my videos and how I go about them in terms of, you know, sound effects and just jokes and things here and there that I throw in my other videos. I don't really do much here in these critiques because this is a bit more of a straightforward, just this is how I did things, this is how you can do it. In terms of my other stuff, if you ever check them out, you can feel a little bit more of his flair being influenced onto those videos. So Thew, I hope you really enjoy this model that I built for you. I know that SKYWARP is your favorite character, so of course, when I saw that there was a Seeker mold out there, I had to snatch one up for you. I'm sorry that the build isn't the greatest. It just kind of is what it is. At least the paint job is pretty solid. If you feel like giving this a knockoff beatdown treatment, I 100% endorse it. I would love to see this on the knockoff beatdown, and I can't wait to see what more work you put out there, lad. Anyways, we'll see you again, and until next time, peace.